Well, it looks like the solar farm industry, the cartel, is wreaking havoc all over the forest preserve, environmental protection areas uh, in all the 50 states. Looks like the national park system's up for grabs under Trump. Everything's up for grabs under Trump. Even that new little honey that's hanging out with him all night long and going to China with him while Melania's at home, or wherever Melania is. Melania knew she was, or excuse me, Melania knew he was married when she took up with him, but, the fabulously wealthy Donnie Trump was just more than she could resist, I guess. Yeah, she got into the United States because she's a genius, I guess. But back to my little pals up there in the forest preserve, forever wild areas of New York. It's always been a scam. It's always been a scam. One house per 42 acres in most of the Adirondacks. One house, and you got to have 42 acres, or you can't have a house. That's by the dictates of the patroons down at the New York State Department of Environmental Confiscation. The New York State, the Empire State Conservation Confiscation Department there, out of Raybrook, New York. Imagine that, up there by Warrensburg. Isn't that just totally coincidental to what happened to my mother and father getting raped out of all their land? Right up the road from Fort Edward, where they're buried, by the way. Alex Fasulo. My parents are buried right across the street from the old General Electric capacitor plant. Isn't that just coincidental? Now, ladies and gentlemen, the problem with the land grabbing and all these solar leases and solar agreements and solar sales and whatever the heck the empire is doing with the world's billionaires to put all these solar panels in the Adirondacks. Those land confiscation schemes and scams of the Pink Line Park, it's always been about the super wealthy. It's always been about the uber wealthy. The Vanderbilts, the Pishaw, let's see, the Astors, Abraham Wing, the Delanos, the Roosevelts, the Rockefellers, George Pataki, holy crap, old George Pataki, and James Big Game. Yeah, James Big Game. Yeah, don't forget that name, old James Big Game. I'll never forget when I got attacked. I got physically attacked, slammed over backwards in my chair, and the files on my parents ripped out of my arms. Physically attacked at 5050 Wolf Road. Isn't that fascinating? About 1975, maybe 74, somewhere in there. Wasn't too long after my father passed away. Yep. Got the files on my parents torn out of my arms. Talk about up close and personal land scheming and land scamming in Queensbury, New York, where Queensbury meets Lake George in the town of Bolton. See, the town of Bolton comes all the way down and meets Queensbury. There were my parents' marina at Harris Bay. The old Bolton crowd. Isn't that just, wow, that's coincidental. What a coincidence. And the artificial flooding of that great Witham swamp. Fascinating story. It lets you know I know how to dig into history. It lets you know that I know how to dig and research into historical records. That's a fact. I don't think that John Apperson and Irving Langmuir and what's his name, LaBruno there, that wrote the book on the Lake George island and shoreline destruction and all the boathouses and docks Yeah, Frank Liam Bruno. There you go. There's his name. They didn't write about the artificial flooding in northern Queensbury, now did they? They didn't write about how they wiped out all that farmland. And I got the receipts. They're published all over my work. I've got the receipts. They traded all that farmland for what? Yeah, the uber wealthy interests at Ticonderoga Creek, where they were flushing all of Ticonderoga's sewage into Lake Champlain, right out in front of Fort Ticonderoga. As you see, Ticonderoga did not have any sewage treatment plants until the early 1970s there, 75, 76. That's when they started their sewage treatment plants there in Ticonderoga. Before that, they were just dumping all that crap right into Lake Champlain with all the industrial waste and mess. 1.5 million cubic yards, 1,500 acres, all over the bottom of Lake Champlain, full of Ticonderoga's sewage and industrial mill wastes. I got the receipts on that too. Flushing, old David Wick. Yep, come on, Dave Wick, Roger Smith, the Lake George Park Commission. Let's talk about all that flushing. And then, of course, you got 6,000, whatever it is, septic tanks draining into the Lake George Basin. Yeah, goes down, hits the bedrock, and right down into the lake. And it's not just phosphates and nitrates, it's sewage. It's bacteria, it's viruses, it's pathogens right into Lake George. So the old Jefferson Project, how many times did they tell you about that? Zip, right? Until I started raising hell. And Chris Nowinski, yeah, never forget it, old Chris Nowinski and the Lake George Association. Do you like that? The Lake George Association. I'm going to leave it right there, folks. I've re-upped on my Legacy Trust Media. Swamp Fox News and Legacy Trust Media is getting some, well, we've taken it upstairs. I want to thank Alex Falusa. I'm having trouble pronouncing that last name, Falusa. Alex Falusa, the American Save the Farmland Trust, or however she says it. The Save the Farmland Fund. It's kind of like the fund for Lake George, only it's for farmland, I guess. Thanks, Alex. Hasta la vista. God bless everybody. And remember one thing, Donald Trump is a wolf in sheep's clothing.